Now I want to give you some examples from the literature. For example, evolutionists claim Neanderthal man to be the ancestor of man. They claimed this on 1859 and 56. And 1960, they apologized. They said, oh, sorry, Neanderthal man is just a different human race. They claim Piltdown man is the ancestor of man, and they apologized after 40 years. And I will go into detail. This is one of the greatest scandals of the history of science. They said, no, Hesperopithecus is the ancestor of man. They apologized. They said Zinjanthropus is the ancestor of man. They said, no, it's just a different ape. They apologized. They said Ramapithecus is the ancestor of man. And they apologized again in 1979. They said Ramapithecus is the ancestor of man. The famous Time magazine put Ramapithecus on its cover. And in Time magazine they said, if Ramapithecus is not the ancestor of man, then we do not have any ancestor of man. You know what happened? In 1979, they apologized again. They said Ramapithecus is just a different ape. So that kind of illustrations that you see in the scientific journals, in the school books, in the media, newspapers, TV, are all fake. That kind of creatures never lived in the past. Again, based on the fossil evidence, usually they have some bone fractures, piece of jaw, piece of skull. Even though you have the whole skeleton, you cannot estimate the soft tissues of these living beings. For example, based on the skeletal evidence, you cannot estimate the ears, the eyes, the lips, the nose, the body hair of these animals. You cannot estimate these soft tissues based on the skeletal evidence, even though you had the whole skeleton. This only reflects the imagination of the artist. It is only to mislead the public, to make the people believe that that kind of creatures lived in the past. They never lived in the past. That doesn't have any scientific value because you cannot estimate the soft tissues based on the skeletal evidence. The technique they apply over here, they use over here, is called reconstruction. Reconstruction means rebuilding. For example, the artists, they go to their workshops and they take casts from the living humans, just like this over here, and they start to play around with these casts. After the last touches, something like this over here, they generate something like this over here. Half ape, half man creature lived in the past and was able to pose for a photograph. Again, based on the skeletal evidence, even though you have the whole skeleton, you cannot estimate the soft tissues. These are only reflects the imagination of the artist. It doesn't have any scientific value. One of the most prominent evolutionist scientists of the 20th century, Ernest Houdin, he makes this confession. He criticizes this technique of reconstruction, although he's an evolutionist. He says, to attempt to restore the soft parts is an even more hazardous undertaking. The lips, the eyes, the ears, and the nasal tip leave no clues on the underlying bony parts. You can with equal facility model on a Neanderthaloid skull the features of a chimpanzee or the lineaments of a philosopher. These alleged restorations of ancient types of man have very little, if any, scientific value and are likely only to mislead the public. So put not your trust in reconstructions. Ernst Houdin says, do not trust reconstructions. It doesn't have any scientific value. It is only to mislead the public. This over here is, of course, a fake. What did they do over here is they took an orangutan and replaced its eyes with human eyes, just to mislead the public, believe that evolution ever happened and that kind of creatures lived in the past. They never lived in the past. They're all forgery. Again, a very good example from the literature. They found a piece of skull, and they gave a name, Zinjanthropus. They said this piece of skull belongs to the ancestor of man. And based on the same skull, 3 very different drawings were made in 3 different sources, scientific journals. This is from National Geographic, that is from Morris Wilson, and that is from Sunday Times. Based on the same skull, they did 3 very different drawings. Again, even though you had the whole skeleton, whole skull, you cannot estimate the soft tissues. As you see over here, 3 artists, they did 3 very different drawings. If you give this piece of skull 100 different artists, they would do 100 different drawings because you cannot estimate the soft tissues based on the skeletal evidence, and this doesn't have any scientific value. It is only to mislead the public. Now, another example about the imaginative power of the evolutionists. They found a single tooth in the United States, Nebraska, long time ago. They claimed the single tooth belongs to the ancestor of man. They gave a name. They called this Nebraska man. And they gave a Latin name also. So based on the single tooth, they made these illustrations. His wife, his family, his children, the environment he lived in, based on one single tooth. They made these illustrations in the scientific journals. One day, years after, they found the remnants of the skeleton of owner of the single tooth. You know what happened? It turned out this tooth belongs to a wild pig, so they apologized again. You see some evolutionist scientists over here. You see their joy and pride. They look very happy. It looks like they made an important discovery. I'm talking about Piltdown Man scandal. In Piltdown, United Kingdom, in 1912, these evolutionist scientists, they claimed they found a skull. They claimed this belongs to the ancestor of man. And they gave a name Piltdown Man. Belongs to the ancestor of man, they said, and it is 500,000 years old, they said. That was put in the British Museum, and one of the largest museums in the world. They put this skull into the British Museum, this so-called Piltdown Man, and displayed there for more than 40 years. 500 different scientific articles were written about this piece of skull to be the ancestor of man. You know what happened? One day a scientist started to work in the fossils in the British Museum. This is from British Museum. You see all these casts and a piece of skull, whatever. He started to work on the fossils in the British Museum. He developed a new dating method. At the time he started work on this Piltdown, so-called Piltdown Man, it turned out this skull of Piltdown Man, the skull belongs to a man, but which is not 500,000 years old as the evolutionists claim. It is only 500 years old. And the jaw belongs to an orangutan, an ape which only recent dead ape. So basically, these people, they put together this skull and the jaw of an orangutan, human skull and orangutan jaw, with special laboratory techniques. And they treated it with a special chemical substance called potassium hydroxide, just to make it look like all 500,000 years old. So this is one of the greatest forgeries in the history of science. This skull was taken from out of the British Museum. They apologized. It was taken out from the literature. So these are only few other forgeries. There are many, many more forgeries of the evolutionists. You may ask, why evolutionists do all these forgeries? Because by having lack of the evidence of the evolution theory, they try to keep the atheism alive. They defend this dogma. It is not a scientific theory, against all the scientific evidences. In order to defend this against scientific evidences, they do all these forgeries. That's the reason why they do it.